Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. In this video we want to share and present about ADS510 which is international relations. So the topic that we choose is the Chinese Communist Party revolution and impacts on China. So next, and this is our members, which is consist 5 members, and we have Muhammad Irfan, DARYL Junior, Muhammad ERZAN, Muhammad NURIZAD, and the last is SYARIAH.
Greetings everyone. Today I'll be presenting on the Chinese Communist Party revolution, one of the most transformative events in 20th century history and its impact on China. To understand the Communist Revolution, we first need to look at China's condition before it. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, China was in deep turmoil. The Qing dynasty, which had ruled for centuries, was collapsing under internal corruption, foreign invasions, and widespread poverty. After the 1911 revolution, the dynasty fell and the Republic of China was established. But rather than bringing stability, the country entered a chaotic period dominated by warlords, economic instability, and foreign exploitation, especially by Japan and Western powers. Most Chinese people were peasants, living in rural areas under harsh landlords with little access to education or healthcare. The government, led by Kuomintang or KMT or Nationalist Party, was weak and often corrupt. There was a desperate need for reform, socially, economically, and politically. Marxism is a political and economic theory developed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, which argues that history is driven by class struggle between the bourgeois, or the wealthy ruling class, and the proletariat, working class. Marx predicted that oppressed workers would eventually rise up, overthrow the capitalist system, and create a classless communist society. The Chinese Communist Revolution aimed to apply Marxist principles to China, but with significant adaptation. China was not an industrial society like Marx envisioned. It was overwhelmingly rural and agrarian. Mao Zedong modified Marxism to focus on the peasants as the revolutionary force rather than the urban working class. The CCP promised to abolish feudalism, redistribute lands, and give power to the people. This made Marxism highly appealing to millions of poor farmers who had suffered under landlords and warlords for generations. In practice, the CCP introduced radical reforms, land distribution, the collectivization of agriculture, nationalization of industries, and political campaigns to eliminate old class structures.
I'm Muhammad Irfan and I'm going to elaborate 3 main points for our topic. Let's begin with the Long March, a turning point in Communist Party history. In 1934, the Chinese Communist Party was under a heavy attack by the Kuomintang or KMT, which is the nationalist force led by Chiang Kai-shek. The communist stronghold in Jiangxi province was surrounded and their survival was at stake. To escape, the Red Army, which is about 100,000 communist soldiers and supporters, began a very strategic retreat that would take them across some of the most dangerous and remote terrains in China. They marched through mountains, rivers, and freezing highlands covering over 9,000 kilometers across 11 provinces. The journey took around a year and the condition was very brutal. They faced constant attack, hunger, diseases, and extreme weather. Out of the original 100,000 soldiers, only about 8,000 to 10,000 that survived. Despite the losses, the Long March became a symbol of resilience and dedication. It also marked the rise of Mao Zedong as the dominant leader of Communist Party. His leadership during the march earned him a very immense respect and gave the CCP a new sense of direction and unity. So even though it was a military retreat, the Long March became a very political and moral victory that laid the foundation for future success. Next, we look at how the CCP used the Second Sino-Japanese War, which overlapped with the World War II to strengthen their position. When Japan invaded China in 1937, the CCP and KMT temporarily formed a united front to fight the common enemy. But the alliance was very fragile and full of mistrust. While the KMT focused on conventional warfare, the CCP chose a different approach. They focused on guerrilla tactics and mobilizing the rural population. The communists gained massive support in the countryside by implementing land reforms where they took land from the landlords and gave it to the poor peasants. This made the peasants feel like the CCP was fighting for them, not just for power. They also focused on education, propaganda, and local governance, building what would be called a state within a state, which is in the area that they control. By the end of the war, even though the KMT had more soldiers and international recognition, the CCP had something more powerful, which is the heart and the minds of the rural majority. After World War II ended in 1945, the fragile alliance between the CCP and KMT collapsed completely. The two sides went back to fighting in what is known as the Chinese Civil War, and at first, many thought the KMT would win because they had more weapons, better training, and support from the United States. But the CCP had more momentum, popular support, and strong leadership under Mao Zedong. They launched various strategic campaigns, which is taking over more and more territory, especially in the north, while KMT was plagued by corruption, economic problems, and low morale, which eventually lead to the losing battle after battle situation. By 1949, the CCP had gained control of almost the entire Chinese mainland. The nationalists retreated to Taiwan, where they set up a separate government. And on October 1st, 1949, Mao Zedong stood in Tiananmen Square and proclaimed the establishment of the People's Republic of China. This was the final and official victory of the Chinese Communist Party revolution. And so, through the hardship of the Long March, the small strategies during World War II, and the eventual military victory in the Civil War, the CCP transformed from a small revolutionary group into the rulers of the most populous nation on earth. These three key points were not only military or political achievements, but also deeply symbolic on how CCP positioned itself as the voice of Chinese people.
To understand the Chinese Communist Party (CCP) revolution through the lens of international relations theories, we can begin with maxims which view history as a struggle between classes. From a Marxist perspective, the CCP revolutions was a natural and necessary uprising of the oppressed peasantry and working class against the exploitative systems of feudal landlords and colonial influence. Although traditional maxims emphasizes the role of the urban proletariat, Mao Zedong adapted the theory to China's rural context, highlighting the revolutionary potential of peasants. This aligns with the broader Marxist aims of dismantling class structures to create a socialist society. Next, in contrast, realism takes a different approach, focusing on power, survival, and state interests. Realists interpret the CCP revolutions not through ideology, but as a strategic power shift. The CCP capitalized on the weakness of the nationalist government and foreign intervention, positioning it as the force capable of unifying China and restoring national sovereignty. From this viewpoint, the revolution was less about social justice and more about consolidating power in an anarchy international system, especially during the early Cold War when global superpowers were competing for influence in Asia.
Meanwhile, constructivism emphasized the role of ideas, identities, and social norms. Constructives argue that the success of the CCP revolution hinged on the power narratives it constructed, promoting nationalism, anti-imperialism, and a vision of a new socialist China. Mao's version of Maxims was not just political, but deeply rooted in Chinese cultural identity, effectively mobilizing the masses through shared beliefs and collective purpose. According to this theory, the revolution succeeded because it redefined what it means to be Chinese in a post-colonial world. When comparing these perspectives, Maxims explains the ideological and class-based motivations behind the revolution. Realism focused on the strategic power dynamics and state-building efforts, while constructivism highlights the influence of identity and cultural narratives. Each theory offers unique insights. Maxims uncover the revolution's social foundations. Realism explains the geopolitical and strategic implications, and constructivism reveals how belief system and social constructs shape revolutionary action. Together, these theories provide a more comprehensive understanding of the CCP revolutions and its significance in both domestic and international context.
Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. In this video, I will be presenting on the impact of the Chinese Communist Revolution on international relations. Let's begin with how the revolution transformed China foreign policies. Before the communist victory, China was a political weak, divided by warlord and heavily influenced by Western powers. After the revolution in 1949, China emerged as a strong, centralized and independent communist state under the leadership of Mao Zedong. Mao adopted an anti-imperialist stance and promoted self-reliance, distancing China from Western influence and colonial legacies. This shift reflected not just a political change, but a deep ideological transformation that positioned China as a leader of the global communist movement. So next, let's talk about the China relation with Soviet Union. Initially, the USSR was China's main ally. In 1950, both countries signed the Treaty of Friendship, promising mutual assistance. The Soviets provided aid, technology, and military support to help China build this economy and defense. However, by the 1960s, the Sino-Soviet split apart. And next, differences over the ideology and leadership, particularly Mao criticism of Soviet reforms and the cause tension. This split weakened the unity of how both nations engage with the rest of the world. Now, let's move to the China-United States relation. After the communist takeover, the US refused to recognize the people of Republic, and China was continued to support the Republic of China in Taiwan. For more than 2 decades, there were no formal diplomatic relations between the US and China. However, as tension with the Soviet Union grew, China saw the strategic benefit of engaging with the US. This led to President Nixon's historic visit in 1972, which opened the door for better peace and eventually led to full diplomatic recognition in 1979. So this revolution therefore had a long-term effect on global alliance and goal war dynamic. In terms of regional influence, China actively support their communist movement, especially in Korea and Vietnam. China sends their troops to fight with the Korean War. So defending North Korea against US LED force, this is not only show China military strength, but also with the willingness to stand up there against Western powers. Similarly to China back North Vietnam during Vietnam War, providing supplies and training. This action made China central player in shaping force colonial Asia and resisting US influence. Finally influence. So we come to the end of our of my point is looking at the global impact. The Chinese Communist Revolution inspired other nations in the developing world. Many anti-colonial movements in Asia, Africa, and Latin America look to the China. The rise of communist China also contribute to the Cold War, bipolar world, where the capitalist bias and the Soviet LED communist blow, with the China playing an increase with the independent role after the Sino-Soviet split. So in the summary, this is the CCP revolution not only reshaped China internally but also significantly influenced their international politics. It affect China alliance, shape Cold War strategies, and impact also global movement. Even today, the legacy of the revolution can be seen in China foreign policy and its roles on the world stage. And that's all from me. Thank you.
In conclusion, the Chinese Communist Party revolution culminating in the founding of the People's